Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or Tiger Tank 12, however you want to call me, I don't really care. And today we're taking a look at the Object 140. This is one of the three Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks. I think it's even one of the four, no, five, because there are like two Tier 10 premium Tier 10 medium tanks in the Soviet line that you cannot get since they are like premium vehicles, the Object 907 and the T-22, which you can actually get by playing the Rampage missions, but unfortunately nobody's playing Rampage at the moment, so yeah, I've never really gotten any missions done for that vehicle. But back on topic, this is my first Soviet Tier 10 medium tank, and I had quite a few good games with this thing. I've not played that many games. If we check, I have 126 with a win rate of 56%. I have the first mark of excellence since I'm not really playing this vehicle too much, and I do enjoy it quite a lot, but we'll get to that later on. So, how do you get to the Object 140? As you know, there are three Tier 10 Soviet medium tanks that you can actually unlock and buy through the tech tree, but they're like different branches. They all end up in very different branches. Pretty much what you need to know is that if you want to get to one of the medium tanks, specifically the Object 140, you'll need to go down the medium line. Very important is that you go down the T34 line. You have to reach the T34. After that, you're pretty much free to decide which branch you want to head on, because in the end, the tank that will lead up to the Object 140 is the T54, and if you do not get the T54, you will not get the Object 140, and the T54 is, in my opinion, the best Tier 9 medium tank, if not maybe the best medium or the most fun medium tank in the game. Definitely, in my opinion, it's a very, very strong vehicle, and I highly suggest getting that. So pretty much you can either go down the A43 branch, where you can eventually go up all the way to the Object 430, or you can reach the T54 by unlocking the Object 416. If you're more of a light tank player, you can actually go down the line with the T54 lightweight, which eventually will lead to the T54 as well. Or if you are more of the old school medium tank player with very standard medium tanks, also very, very powerful medium tanks in my opinion. One of my line that is like the highest in win rate and in efficiency wise. I highly suggest to play the T34, 85, T50, T43, the T44. I love this vehicle, and eventually you'll reach the T54. And the nice thing about the T54 is that you can actually unlock two Tier 10 medium tanks with just one Tier 9 tank, and I think that is the only branch where you can do that. I don't think there's any other Tier 9 tank that can unlock two Tier 10 vehicles, and that just shows you like a very good side of the T54. So definitely the T54 is worth all the experience you need to get to it. So we will be comparing this vehicle mostly to the Object 430 and to the T62A. Unfortunately, I do not own either one of them, but we can still take a look at the differences with the statistics. And the first difference you can see immediately if you take a look at the hit points of all the three vehicles. The Object 140 has the least amount of hit points with 1,900, while the Object 430 has 100 more hit points with 2,000 hit points, and the medium tank T62A has 50 more hit points. Now, this might not strike that much of downfall for the Object 140, but you know, you may never know. Maybe you need those 50 HP extra, or the 100 HP extra might be very nice in certain situations. If you take a look at the weight load limit, since all three of those medium tanks share very similar statistics and similarities in looks, profile, and gun handling, all that kind of stuff. You can see that the weight load limit is very similar as well. The only difference is that the T62A is heavier by 800 kilograms than the Object 140, which unfortunately will make the tank slower, since the engine power or the horsepower on all three of the vehicles is the exact same, with 580 horsepower per ton. And you can see that you have like a 55 kilometer top speed on this vehicle and the Object 430, and only 50 kilometer top speed on the T62A. So very similar, slight differences in the end. With the traverse speed, you can see that the Object 140 is in the middle area with 54 degrees per second. The Object 430 with 52 degrees per second is the worst, and the T62A with 56 degrees per second is the fastest. 54 degrees per second, that's very strong, and 52 degrees per second is also very, very good. Now let's get on to the hull armor. The hull armor is on the Object 140 only 100 millimeters thick, but it's very nicely angled so that shots may ricochet off your frontal armor, but 100 millimeters at tier 10 might most of the time not be enough. So it's very easy to actually get penetrated by tier 9 vehicles, for example, or even tier 8 vehicles that have high enough pen. You have this lower plate right here, which is the obvious weak spot on this vehicle up front, since the upper plate here is angled very nicely and the lower plate is angled as well, but it's a lot thinner. Then you have 80 degrees, no, not 80 degrees, but 80 millimeters of armor on the side, which is okay. It's not too strong, but still HE will most of the time not go through your side. And you have 55 millimeters of armor on your rear. This is the best amount of the armor on the rear on all the three Soviet medium tanks, by 10 millimeters thicker than the T62A's armor or the Object 430's armor, which is only 40 millimeters thick in the rear. But that doesn't really matter, because a rear part of the vehicle is very vulnerable for any other tank. So yeah, 55 millimeters, you will not bounce anything still nonetheless. Now if we check up, the armor is very similar to the T62A. The frontal armor is a little bit worse than the Object 430's armor, because the 430 has even better angled frontal armor, if I may remember correctly. And yeah, so if we check back into the to the turret armor, we can see that the turret armor is up front very similar, 240 all the way to 248 on the Object 430. A very, very bouncy part of your tank, definitely the frontal turret. The side turret on all the Soviet heavy medium tanks, is rather strong as well. Only the T62A has weaker side turret armor with 161 millimeter, which is still very, very strong. And since it's like rounded, it's very hard to penetrate, especially if the tanker is turning his turret right at that moment. I would highly suggest shooting the side armor if you have a profile of this vehicle. But if you cannot shoot the lower plate, of course, if you cannot shoot the hull, of course, shoot the side turret. With 187, it's gonna be quite tough. But if you have a high penetrating gun, for example the IS-4, you'll be able to penetrate that nonetheless. Just be careful that you do not shoot the rounded part and that the tanker is not moving his turret. The rear part of the turret is with the T62A the strongest, 65 millimeters of armor. Don't expect to bounce anything. On the Object 430, it's slightly worse with 2 mm armor less, but that won't be that much of a problem. Much more of a problem on this vehicle are the cupolas that you have on top. Well, pretty much the Object 140 has the most prominent commander hatches on top of its tank. These are very easy to hit, especially if in close engagements, and unfortunately a lot of people will shoot them and you will not bounce that many shots, especially if they have a higher profile, which is also one of the things. The Soviet medium tanks all have a very low profile that is sometimes a blessing and sometimes it's a curse, because in certain situations you're protected because you're so low. You can use very low ridgeline still to cover your hull armor, but you can still stick out your turret. And of course that allows you to get some very nice engagements going on. But in other parts you are not able to stick your head up over some ridge lines, some certain ridge lines, and if a tank is facing you, face-hugging you, they can just shoot down on top of your vehicle, which is also a big problem that I have with my Object 140, since that has happened quite often, and you would not believe how many shots I've taken up my upper part of my turret, where they just shoot, like, because they're higher set than me. Like, let's say a E100 is facing me and it's just shooting me straight down. It's like straight down shooting at my top part of my turret. He will actually be able to penetrate my turret even with AP rounds if he has a good enough angle or even enough luck. So yeah, keep that in mind. The profile, your low profile, can be a blessing and a curse, and you always have to adjust to the moment and to the situation you're in. So yeah, moving on from the turret, we can move on to the gun, and I think the gun on all those three tanks is the same with the 100mm UATS, and I have to actually just take a look at the Object 430 so we can check the similarities and the differences, since the guns do tend to be different. Oh no, actually not. They're not different. They're all exactly the same. So you have a 100mm gun with an amazing fire rate of 9.09 rounds per minute. That means you'll be shooting every 6 seconds or something like that if you use like the perks, and if you have commanders, brothers in arms, all that kind of stuff, you'll be shooting even faster. I have actual reload time of 5.7 seconds with gun rammer. Even if I would put on vents, I think it would be even faster. And if I would have like brothers in arms 100%, I will be shooting even faster. The average penetration is quite good with 264mm, which are of course APCR rounds. Then you have 330mm with heat rounds, which will go through anything. That's more than enough penetration. In my opinion, the APCR rounds already are very, very good with the pen of 264mm. Then you have the high explosive rounds with which have 50mm of pen. You have the average damage of about 320 and dispersion of 0.35. Now, this gun is a very, very fast aiming gun. It's very accurate, and it does not sting very much, since you'll be moving in the areas of about 260 all the way to maybe 400 damage shots. But of course, the DPM is very high, since you have 9.09 rounds per minute, and that will allow you to be actually a quite competent scout, sniper, and a quite competent brawler with the armor that you actually have. So that means this vehicle is quite versatile, and that's exactly the thing that medium tank players want to hear. They want to hear that their vehicle is capable of engaging in close quarters and in longer range engagements. And this vehicle is definitely one of them. It does not excel at anything in particular. It's just a very, very good all-rounder Soviet tank. and I think that's what you can call the T-62A as well. These tanks are just very, very good at what they're doing. Being medium tanks, they're really good at it, and that's exactly what you want as a medium tank player. So the turret traverse speed, unfortunately I just clicked away the window, is 40 degrees per second, which is actually, we can compare it to other tier 10 medium tanks. It's 10 degrees per second faster than the E50M, which has like this very flat frontal part of the turret, unfortunately very big weak spot. Then if we go on to the M48, I think it's less. The M48 has exactly the same with 40 degrees per second, and the Batchat has a very bad turret rotation of, well, actually 38. I thought it was worse, but yeah. I think one of the vehicles that has better turret traverse speed is the 62A with 48 degrees per second, and I'm not sure, but I think the Object 430 is in this similar area with 40 degrees per second. Yeah. So you can still turn your turret and stay completely still with your vehicle. It's not that it will cost you like a lot of time. It's just a very standard turret traverse speed of 40 degrees per second in tier 10. The view range is very standard as well with 400 meters for a tier 10 vehicle, and the signal range is not that important, but it's also a very standard signal range of 761 meters. So yeah, this tank sounds, from the statistics, very, very no, it sounds very, very good at what it has to do, but it doesn't sound like it's any doesn't sound like a special vehicle like the Batchat, which can do massive amounts of damage in those 5 shots, or the E50M, which has like amazing armor and just can ram anything. This thing just sounds like a very, very mediocre vehicle that does not excel at any particular thing, but is very, very good still, or nonetheless. The only difference that I can say is that the Object 140, why a lot of people choose this vehicle over the T-62A, is the gun elevation. That is one of the things that is very important. This tank has gun depression of -6 degrees, while the T-62A has a gun depression of -5 degrees. That's 1 degree more than the T-62A. And in certain situations, that is very, very important. If we check up with the Object 430, it also has worse gun depression with -1 degree less, and you can just see that can sometimes be a very, very decisive factor in an engagement, since you can actually just lower your gun a little bit more than the 62A or the Object 430. But nonetheless, it's not a game-changing addition for the Object 140, since in the other statistics they're all very similar. So yeah, I'll show you guys some gameplay now, and show you exactly what this tank is capable of and where the limits rest with this vehicle. So, got one game for you guys in my Object 140, and we're playing on the map Overlord. It's a tier 10 match with some tier 9s and some tier 8s thrown in there for some good measure, you know, as always. Matchmaker cannot be fair. Poor tier 8 guys. And there's quite a lot of artillery as well, so one of the things that no tank really does fare well is Audi. Well, Audi is always going to be a problem for any tank, but since we do not have the biggest profile in size or in height, I don't think we will be the main artillery target, since we do have a lot more important targets here. So pretty much one of the things I want to show you guys in this gameplay is just how quickly this vehicle can put out its shells, and you can just see the power of the Soviet medium tanks if you are not being engaged, and if they just kind of ignore you, and what kind of game can happen to you pretty much in this vehicle. and just shows you the exact power that this vehicle possesses because of its all very good characteristics like mobility, armament, and armor. And you can see that usually on this map, medium tanks go down the 9 and 0 line, and they usually fight it out down here. But if the enemy team, or if one side of the team just doesn't go here and completely ignores this flank, it's very, very easy to flank them. And that's exactly what we're trying to do right here. I'm playing it very cautiously because they have 3 artillery. Each one of them can really hit hard, and it may really hurt me. So I had some very bad experience with artillery early on in another game, so I decided to play a little bit more safe. And you can just see that, in my opinion, like the patch 9.14 has made the gameplay a little bit slower. It has moved the pace down a little bit. It just feels like the tanks that used to be extremely fast seem to be slower now, but it's not really. It's just that it seems to be slower, everything. But it's not really. It's hard to explain. It's a feeling that you get when you're playing the game, and when you have, you know, when you're just familiar with the old pace, and now you have a new pace. So back on to the gameplay, you can see they left this flank completely open. With the Object 140, I can just roll through here right now, and this is exactly where you want to find yourself in any medium tank, and especially in the Object 140. You want to be behind the enemy lines where you have the soft targets of your enemies, and here you can just see the accuracy of this vehicle on the move, and just how resilient this thing is. And you can see this is what I meant with the extra gun depression that you have a little bit over the T62A. You have this soft terrain, and it's very hard for them, this low terrain, it's very hard for them to engage you at this spot. Unfortunately, E50M did make a huge misplay there, and he went up right inside of that, and he didn't even have the gun depression to actually engage these guys. And now you can just see with this vehicle how fast you can clean up any remaining army if they just kind of ignore you, or just how much DPM you can get with this thing. Now you can see there's a Waffenträger of E100, and I'm just spitting shots at this guy. And even if you wanted to engage me right here, I'd have this little slope, this little hill right here, which would protect my lower, my hull, and he would only be able to engage my turret. And you can just see the rounds per minute are, it's crazy. I'm just spitting out shots like a machine gun with this vehicle, and damage-wise, you know, since you're firing APCR rounds with with a 100mm gun, you can just see that you're not as dangerous as an M48. Oh, well, of course you're still as dangerous as an M48, but you just do not have the alpha damage as M48 does have, or the Batchat with a 105mm gun. But you can just see, well, this was not a very good example, but before that snapshot on the Waffenträger of E100, this vehicle is extremely accurate with this gun, and it's perfect for sniping. It's great for close range engagement, as you can see right here. The IS-7 now being surrounded by quite a few tanks, and we're still able to penetrate this lower plate because we just do have this 264mm of penetration, which is super nice to have. And now with this mobility, you can just see that you can always keep on the move. You're not as fast as maybe a Batchat on full speed, but you're just much more maneuverable than a Batchat, because a Batchat just has a lot worse turrets and track traverse speed. But right here you can see that this tank, well, if you give them the weak spot, you can just see how fast the HP dwindles down to all the way to 1135 HP from 1900. This guy just pretty much put 2 shots into us, and each one of those shots hurt us very, very badly. And you can just see that this tank is maybe not the best tank to take shots in, because you do not have the amazing armor or the hit points, unfortunately. But you can see with the very short amount of time we had spent at this little ridge line, we did about 5,145 damage. And this is just the beauty of the Russian medium tanks. If you have the momentum on your side, if you can dictate the combat, the pace of the combat, you'll be able to put out these shots round after round after round after round, because you just have this alpha, not the alpha, but the here. Oh, I just forgot it. Damage per minute. And you can see, unfortunately, there I was a little bit too aggressive. The GW Tiger took advantage of that and almost killed us, and he took away 581 hit points. We could have actually just have driven over to wait, I'm thinking right now. Could have tried to drive over here and shoot at the ridgeline, at like one of these deeper parts of the ridgelines, and shoot through it, since that thing is quite tall with the profile. You can see this is like one of the back drops that you have. You can actually hide behind this ridgeline, but in this situation, if the tank would have been a little bit higher from the profile, you would have been able to engage that thing, and you would not have had to cross over the ridgeline. Now you can see the profile, the size, the height, the length of the tank is always situationally based, so sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You can see in this particular situation a little bit more cover, a little bit less cover, a little bit more height to our vehicle would have helped us definitely to engage this GW Tiger, definitely without taking any damage. But yeah, you can see the power of the Object 140 when pretty much there's a passive game going on where you can just put off all your shots. Let's take a look at a little bit more aggressive approach with this vehicle. So the second battle is on the map Arctic region, and we're playing up, or we're pretty much teamed up against quite a lot of tier 10 heavy tanks and just a few tier 8 vehicles. We actually have 2 tier 9 vehicles, they have 1 tier 9 vehicle, and you can see there's just 1 artillery on each side. That means for us, we will probably be already safe, since they will not target us most of the time. So the thing on this map is that if you're a medium tank, you should usually go up north, except if you don't have enough heavy tanks, or if you're very confident with your skill of, or if there are more than enough medium tanks going up north, you should probably always head up north. Otherwise, you can head down south, but since that is pretty much a heavy tank route, you will most of the time not be able to do that much damage, and your armor will probably not hold up as well as it will in the north, since you will be facing mostly medium tanks. But it's always nice to have a heavy tank follow you around up north, and that's exactly what happens right here. And you can see the mobility of this vehicle is great. We are far ahead with our 55 kilometers per hour, and we're already in position to engage the guys up north. And you can see there we have the one of the 2 tier 10 Soviet premium heavy tanks, now medium tanks, that unfortunately you cannot unlock unless you've played the campaign and you've been quite effective in the campaign. So you can see the high rate of fire right here in this position allows me to shoot that guy quite often, and this is exactly where you want to be in your Object 140. A little ridgeline which covers your hull and leaves you enough space to fire at the tanks back in the A4 area. So right here I'm trying to push because I know we have to push the enemies here, or South will not have enough time. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of a misplay. The T-62 right there was able to put a shot into us, and now you can see the beauty of this vehicle if it is hauled down with this turret, and this T-62A just has a really hard time of engaging us, and he doesn't even choose to engage us anymore. since pretty much the E50 back there and the FV215B are easy targets, or better targets. And you can see this is one of the things that I really love about this vehicle: shooting on the move. This tank is so accurate that you can shoot on the move very easily and still be very accurate. And you can see that the T-32 right there bounced off our hull as well. At tier 8 you can expect quite a lot of bounces on this vehicle because of the nice angle and the 100mm of armor, which are enough at this tier. Unfortunately, you will not be able to bounce Object 268, as he just penetrated our side, I think, yeah. And now with the rate of fire, we just humiliate this tank destroyer, as you'll see right here. He's able to track us, but he's unable to put a nice shot into us. And I'm just looking for the AMX 1390 right there. And you can see he bounced off our turret again, just like all the other guys. And the rate of fire just allows us to really punish all these guys. And with the high pen of 268mm, no, 264mm with the APCR rounds, we're able to penetrate this 200 Object 268 easily with the weak spots that we aim at. So you can see, once again, we use our mobility to get into position, and right here, perfect firing on the move is very, very funny and very efficient with this tank, actually. And just here you have this perfect example of accuracy of this vehicle. Here you can see really the aim time, the accuracy, and the reload time, which just allows you to decimate enemies who are not paying any attention, who are AFK. And I kind of feel bad for this guy, because he had no chance. I think he left the game. So right here we have a FV4005, and well, unfortunately we're not able to take him out. But still, we've done 4,406 damage, and we've blocked 1,950 damage in 8 rounds. Like 2 rounds actually penetrated us. One was right through the back of our tank with the T-62A, and one was right through the side with the Object 268. So you can see for tier 10 medium tank, this tank is not armored as well as the 50M frontally, but still it is armored enough to be able to annoy certain people, because they just cannot penetrate you if they don't aim enough and long enough. And you can see they actually penetrated my top part of my tank, and that is one of the things you have to keep in mind, that the cupola here and the top part of your turret, they are a weak spot if they are face hugging you, or if they are able to shoot down on top of you and they just have a higher profile than you have. That is one of the weak spots. But you can just see that this tank is very reliable, especially with the gun handling, which is amazing in my opinion. The mobility is great, and in my opinion, all-rounder, this is a very, very good medium tank, what a medium tank exactly should be. Fast, strong with its gun, and very versatile in certain situations where you can also use your armor to your advantage if you have to. Doesn't exceed in any prospect, like it doesn't have auto-loading gun like the Batchat, or it's not as fast as the Leopard 1. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is a very good all-rounder, and if you're starting with medium tanks and you want to have, you know, a little bit of security while you're playing your medium tanks, and you just swapped over from heavy tanks, and you just want to have something faster, something a little bit more mobile, but still that vehicle that can really punish the enemies with the gun and is very reliable, I think the Soviet Tech Trio with the Object 140 or the T-62A is a very good choice for tankers that just started playing medium tanks, because the Batchat, in the end, that is a tank that needs a little bit more skill, in my opinion, because the Batchat just does not have as much armor, not as much hit points, and it is fast, but the track traverse speed is not as great. So yeah, the Batchat is one of those tanks that is prone to be very, very powerful in the hands of the right player, but if it's in the hands of a very, very unskilled Batchat player, somebody who doesn't really know what to do with their Batchat, it is a big waste of potential in my opinion. So if you're starting to get into medium tanks, in the medium tank line, I think the Object 140 and the Soviet tech line is very, very good. Of course, since my favorite tank in the game is the T110E5 or the M48 Patton, I would highly suggest playing the M48 Patton, but since the M48 Patton does not excel at anything as much, it is it has become a lot better now because of the patch, which has really improved the M48 Patton, but still nonetheless it does not excel, or it does not have this high standard that the Object 140 has. It does have better gun depression, and it also does have, I think, wait, I have to think. It has better gun depression, better turret traverse. No, exactly the same turret traverse speed. It's a lot bigger, it has a bigger profile, but it's a lot slower. Yeah, so you have to keep that in mind if you want to go for the M48 Pat. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed this what to expect video. I know it has been a little bit of a longer video this time, but still a lot of work has went into this video stuff. So please rate and comment what do you think of the Object 140. Do you think it's justified that I called this tank almost a clone of the T62A or the Object 430? And would you get it anytime soon? So I'll see you guys in the next video.